Hi friends, welcome to episode number 5 of our Workflow Level 1 series. In this episode, we will try to kind of understand about the workflow line approvals in Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. Many of your users have been asking to me in LinkedIn. Of course, I was unable to respond to those messages, but that's why we are prioritizing this in this episode number 5. We will try to understand about how do we configure the workflow line items in Dynamics 365. And also we will try to create a purchase order, approve the header level workflows, and then the line level workflows as well. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel D365 Talks or follow my profile in LinkedIn. With that note, let's quickly jump into today's topic. So let's quickly get into the topic of workflow line approvals. So we have just slightly changed our agenda. We wanted to kind of give a walkthrough of the workflow editor app Canvas, but many of you have requested at least few in the LinkedIn as well in terms of, even though I have not replied to your messages, apologies for the same, but I have constantly monitored the comments and the messages. So feel free to post your messages and comments. I'll be happy to read it out. So many of you have been asking about the workflow line approvals. How do we configure that and how to approve those as well in the purchase order documents? So that's what we will see in this video. And so we have discussed in detail about the workflow elements, applying the placeholders, assignment of users. So those are the prerequisites. Make sure that you watch all of those episodes and before coming to the episode number 5. We discussed in detail about the condition approval in the last episode, and today we will discuss about the workflow line approvals. So first and foremost is you need to understand what is workflow line approval. So workflow line approvals typically work along with the source document. Let's say in this case, if we are discussing about the purchase orders, then the purchase order header and the purchase order line can have different workflow approval mechanism. So once the typically in purchase requisitions, where I have seen like all the purchase requisition lines have to be routed to different users or hierarchies or legal entity specific approvals based on the budgeting, so that once all the lines are approved, automatically your purchase requisition or purchase order header will be updated to the status as approved as well. So sometimes organizations requires line level approval as well. First, let's directly get into the workflow line approval configuration, and then we'll come back to the slide to discuss about how do we invoke a single approval workflow for all items, or if you want to invoke a workflow for each and every line item, but you want to provide certain conditions for the same. But we have already discussed about the how do we configure the conditions, so we will not touch upon the conditions, but rather we will look at a simple workflow for the lines in Dynamics 365. So I'll quickly jump into Dynamics 365 screen. So we are on the home page, and I'll go to the procurement sourcing module, and because we are typically taking the example of purchase orders in Dynamics 365. So if I go to procurement sourcing workflows, so yeah, I can see there is a purchase order workflow, and let me check whether the version is active first. This is not active. Let me make this active. So the way the line workflow actually works is, first of all, you need to have the purchase order workflow for the header, and then you have to configure a purchase order line workflow as well. Right now, you can see the status is marked with a warning, so this is not yet configured. But by default, when you land in this page of procurement and sourcing workflows, you will not be able to see this line item. But what you have to do is you should need to click on new, and then after clicking on new, you should be able to add it from over here. If you simply click on this, then it will open the workflow editor space where you need to log in again, and then probably you will be able to start configuring the workflow purchase order line workflow. So this is purchase order line workflow, not purchase order workflow. So there is a differentiation between these two. And you can also see there is purchase requisition line review and purchase requisition review. So you have to differentiate between each and everything. So if you want to have only header level workflow, then you need to configure purchase order workflow. If you want the line also need to be considered, then purchase order line workflow is the one workflow type which you should primarily use. So in this case, we have already a workflow which is added over here. So I'll just simply click on this, and it will just ask me to open the editor app, and I will pause the video and I will complete the login, and then once again I will resume it back, right? So I think I have logged inside successfully. So let me open the editor app. I'll bring this in the screen. So this exactly the same workflow canvas app which we are looking right now. We already kind of familiarized with the last 4 episodes. So now all you have to do is you need to configure approve purchase order line or approve purchase order lines and assign approver to edit the purchase order lines. One of these workflow elements is primarily something which you have to use. So in this case, we'll just try to use the approve purchase order line node. And of course, you have to connect from start to end. And we need this approve workflow need to be connected to end. So inside this workflow, of course, you can see the error messages here which are popping out. So as we discussed already, you can provide approve this purchase. You can provide these instructions which you want, which is order line. So let me keep, because we already discussed about the placeholders. Even if you want, you can add the placeholders so that it is easy for the users to kind of know what exactly they are approving it. So that's one description where a message which is gone now, and we have to assign the assignment to type. Currently it is none, it cannot be none, you have to assign a user. So let me assign an user as well. I'm sure that the user Inga is assigned with appropriate privilege and roles. So I'll assign Inga, and then I'll close this. So first step which you have to do is you have to configure the purchase order line workflow, because this line workflow, until unless it is configured, you cannot assign this line workflow for the header workflow. So let me save and close. Provide a version as 1.0 line. So once it is saved and closed, then once again we have to let me activate the new version. So once again we have to log inside the purchase order header workflow, and typically in the header workflow we need to add this additional node of here in under the workflow elements. You will be able to view the purchase order line workflow element as well in the header workflow, and you have to add that. So we will quickly see that as well. I'll just wait for this page to close, and meanwhile let me go back to the presentation. And then, yeah. So in the purchase order header workflow, when we configure it, we have two options. So if the same workflow should process all line items on a document, then you click on invoke a single workflow for all line items. Then select the workflow to use to process the line items. So basically what it means is, so inside the workflow, when we actually add the line workflows within the header workflow, then in the line workflow, we need to configure whether you want to invoke single workflow for all the items, or if you want to invoke the workflow for each and every line item. So let's say if there is a case like you create a purchase order for the items, the products, and also for services, for maybe for cleaning, maintenance, for which you have a different workflow. So based on each and every line, if you want the workflow to be processed, then in that case you have to configure invoke a workflow for each and every line item. So let me go back to Dynamics 365. So let me refresh this page. I just do not want to see this. So I think this is successfully configured now. So the status is updated. Now what I will do is, once again I'm going to log into purchase order workflow, but like I said earlier, I'm going to pause the video and then I'm going to log inside the workflow editor app, and then once again I'm going to resume back. So I think we have logged in successfully. Let me open the editor app. So inside the workflow editor, now this is very simple and straightforward. There are no conditions specified over here, and if you want, you can specify those conditions. But in this case, what we are going to do is, you can see for this workflow purchase order workflow, You can also see the workflow element, which is line item workflow, right? So we need to add this node as well. And now what we are going to do is, first I want the header to be approved, and then I want the purchase order lines to be reviewed. So what I will do is, I'll click on this node, I'll pick this arrow, and instead of end, I'll drag it over here. So I want the workflow to be started, and then the purchase order header need to be approved, and still I want the document continue to remain in the in review status, and I want to complete the purchase order line approval. So you can, at any point in time, you can right click and then go to properties, and then you can, this is what we were discussing, the two options: invoke a single workflow for all items, or invoke a workflow for each and every line item. So that's a description which we were discussing over here, and I hope that is clear. So in this case, we will invoke a single workflow for all the items. You can also provide your own specific name, like Shriram. So I know that this is a workflow line item which was created by me. And when you hit the drop down, you can see this workflow ID 00029, right? So it is actually the workflow which we just recently created. So this is the workflow ID which we created. So in order to assign the workflow line for a purchase order header, the prerequisite is you need to create a purchase order line workflow, without which you cannot assign it to a header workflow. So now, since we have created it, let me assign it to the workflow, and then I'll close this. I'll close this, and then I have to define an outgoing node from this to end, and I think we are good. So let me now close this. So we have configured the header workflow, we configured the line workflow separately, and then we have assigned that line workflow in the purchase order lines workflow element. And let me quickly check. So who is the user who has been assigned here? I believe it's Inga here as well. So here also it is Inga. So header is approved. Ideally, this will not be the case where header and line has been approved by the same user, but forget about it. We are just trying to kind of understand the scenario here. Let me save and close this. I'll give v1.0 header. Let me click on OK. So once this is successfully saved, then we need to activate the workflow in Dynamics 365. We'll quickly create a purchase order and check how the workflow is primarily. Now let me activate the new version, and we'll quickly create a purchase order in Dynamics 365, and then we will add a couple of lines, and probably we'll add quickly one line to keep the video short. So only when the line is approved, that's when the header gets updated to the status as the approved status gets updated as approved. Until unless the header status will continue to remain in the in review state. So yeah, let me quickly check in procurement and sourcing module. So first of all, I just want to check whether the activate change management is enabled. So this is now enabled now. Let me save this, and then let me go back to procurement and sourcing, purchase orders, and all purchase orders. So let me kind of unpin this, click on new, and then I'll create one purchase order quickly. I think already we discussed about all these of creation of purchase orders and other stuffs in the procurement and sourcing playlist. We have like around 30 plus videos in the procurement and sourcing playlist. Feel free to kind of check those as well, because if you want to learn some deep concepts of procurement and sourcing. So let me add the item, and I can see the status of the document is in draft, and let it be one quantity, and I'll just submit this for workflow. So in this case, I'm submitting the header workflow. Here in the line, you can see there are necessarily no option for us to submit the line level workflows, but I'll quickly show you how the system behaves if we have configured this workflow line item as well. So right now you cannot kind of view any of the workflows at the line level details, but right now this is in review. Let me also quickly check if the batch jobs are running. So if you go to system administration, inquiries, batch jobs. So the workflow batch jobs, which we have already discussed in the last couple of episodes, I just want to quickly confirm that. I think everything is under waiting status. If one of these were in withhold, probably you have to change it to waiting status, so that's completely fine. So let me go to the purchase order in the other tab, then let me refresh and check whether the workflow is triggered or not. So the workflow is triggered, and workflow item is created, and it is assigned to Inga. So header workflow is working completely as expected, but let me, for just for this demo reasons, I am just reassigning it to myself. I'm not kind of logging out. I just don't want to log in again with the Inga as a user. So I just reassigned it. So let me go ahead and approve this workflow. So I guess now we have approved it. So this is basically the header level workflow. I think you can see the status is, first of all, we have reassigned to the admin, who is Julia, and the status is completed. And let me refresh this, because I just want this to show me the message as workflow is completed. I think it is taking some time for the batch job to get completed. And once the batch job is completed, because once the workflow, let me go back, because we can primarily view the line workflow option as well. I think it got triggered. You can see this, the approval completion has happened, approve purchase order. So this is for the header level, and which resulted in creation of the purchase order line Shriram workflow. So this is the workflow for the line which we just configured, and we can see that this node is getting activated. Now let me go back and check. In the line, we will be able to view the workflow submission option as well. Yeah, I think you can see here that this option was not there before. Now we have enabled this. Since we have approved the header, you can see that the status is continued to be in review. And now let's go ahead and kind of see the workflow history from here. This is for the line, and in this case as well, the form remains as same. You can reassign it to any user. In this case, I'm reassigning it to myself. Let me give the admin role and reassign it. So it is now reassigned to Julia Funderburg. Let me go ahead and refresh this page. In this case, let me check. So now I'm able to approve the purchase. So approve this purchase order line. This is the just work instruction which we gave. I will just simply click on approve, and of course you can delegate the approval to some other user as well. And then I'm going to approve this. So this will result in, so you can see the line status is pending approval, and so once the batch job is completed, it will move to the status as approved, and the header status also need to be updated back as approved. So on the top, let me go ahead and check the workflow history. I think workflow history is the place where you can kind of understand what is the current state of the workflow, who has approved it, what action item is pending. So you will be able to get all those information. So let me refresh this again. So sometimes this typically takes some good amount of time because the batch job has to complete. So in the meantime, let's go back to the presentation and refresh the topics quickly. So primarily, first what we did is we kind of created the purchase order line workflow, without which you will not be able to assign the workflow line item in the purchase order header. In the purchase order header, you need to kind of drag and drop the workflow element for the purchase order lines. And inside the purchase order lines, you need to either invoke a single workflow for all items, or you need to invoke a workflow for each and every line item. So let's say you have 10 different lines you wanted to, in this case, the demo, what we just saw right now, we invoked a single workflow, but instead if you want a workflow for each and every line item, then you have to possibly go for the option number 2, and then you can also provide some specific conditions as well. Select the workflow to use to process line items that meet the set of conditions that you define. So in this case, the conditions will be evaluated by the system. So let me go back and then let me refresh this page again. So that's great. You can see the workflow line item status is completed, and now after approving the purchase order header, we approved the purchase order line as well, and then the purchase order document status updated as approved, and now the user, as a user, I can go ahead and confirm the purchase order, right? So that's the detailed overview of purchase order line workflow configuration in Dynamics 365. Same kind of workflow configurations has to be done for your purchase requisitions or other source documents as well, right? So with that, we are coming to the end of this episode number 5. See you soon in the next episode. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel D365 Talks or follow my profile in LinkedIn. Thank you.